Let's see here. We got a question here from Blue Jay. Will I be able to use my sub 250 gram ducted Cinewhoop to film an outdoor concert at night that involves flying over the crowd? Let's break this down, Blue Jay, because I think I see where your question's going. The question is really, will the FAA be mad at me if I do this? Because obviously, yeah, you can do it. Will I be able to do it? It's like when somebody would say, you would say, hey, Mom, can I have a piece of candy? And she'd say, or this is more a dad joke than a mom joke, sorry. Dad, can I have a piece of candy? And say, I don't know. Can you? I mean, you can. The question is the FAA going to be mad about it? And let's break this down. It is outdoor. Since it's outdoors, you are in the national airspace when you're flying. And therefore, the FAA believes that they have jurisdiction. I say believes that they have because that's going to be what they use to determine whether they come after you. And some people think they shouldn't, and I'm not touching that. That's why I put it that way. If you were indoors, if you were in a closed arena, then the FAA would have no jurisdiction, and you could do basically whatever you want within the realms of, you know, what you might get sued for or anything. It's interesting because, like, you know, there are some sports arenas where the top can open and close, right? You could be flying the exact same drone over the exact same people, and if the top of the arena opens, suddenly you're in the national airspace, and the FAA wants to regulate you. And if the top of the arena closes, you're no longer in the national airspace, and the FAA doesn't want to regulate you, which seems kind of silly. But that's how the rules are. Blunty, do you agree? Is that how the rules are? Am I off base there?
I'm sorry, I've been queuing questions. I wasn't listening.
If you're in a sports arena and they open the top of the arena to the sky, now you're in the national airspace. And they close the top of the arena, you're not in the national airspace anymore.
Yeah,
right?
That would be my understanding, yeah.
Kind of silly, but okay.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I mean, if you have it's really weird because, yeah, how much, I don't think there's an official answer as to how much counts and how high the ceiling can be and how much it has to cover, right? Like, because there could be,
it's interesting.
If it's tent without net, if it's 20 feet high, if it's 40 feet high, if it's 100 feet high, right? Like, is part of it open and part of it closed? Is the garage door open mean you're outdoors for the entire garage? There's a lot of questions.
Oh, that's
people
interesting.
Have, right?
Yeah. Like, if you think about it, if I was like, I've always thought that what matters is that you're undercover. So, for example, if you're underneath, like, you know, like in some parts of the country, they got those riding rings where it's a great big covered barn, but the sides are open, right? Well, my thinking is that if you were flying underneath that cover, you're not in the national airspace. But someone might argue that having the open walls, but by that logic, could you have a house with an open window? And if you open the window, now you're in the national airspace. If you're in that arena and they roll back the ceiling one inch, are you in the national airspace? What if they roll back the ceiling 10 feet? What about 50 feet?
Yeah. Yeah, and remember, we're not arguing logic. I think we logically could answer questions. We're arguing rules, right? We don't know that. Yeah.
We know that FAA regulations often have no requirement to be based in logic. So, yeah, if you're in a building and someone opens a skylight, suddenly the FAA comes around and says, "What are you doing? You're in the national airspace." So we understand that this is bullshit, but
I'll just say that's a common thing I see a lot from people who want to do real estate shoots or building shoots. They want to fly in, and maybe they're only flying in like 3 feet, 5 feet. But am I outdoors? Am I in the airspace if I'm 3 feet out the front door? Right? I am, right? But I'm like, no plane or helicopter would ever be there, and I could never interfere with anything. So like, it's just very odd, right?
Yep, I agree. If you fly out onto a covered porch, what about then?
Right.
Okay, but none of that matters because in this case, you are in an outdoor concert at night. So you definitively, even in the realm of logic, you're in the national airspace. Unless, well, anyway. So the FAA is involved, and what do the FAA regulations say? Because you're filming a concert, we're going to guess that this probably is a 107 operation. It's possible that you are entirely 100% recreational. I've been to music festivals and I see drones flying around. And my guess is that some of those drones are just some dude who brought a drone and put it up for fun, right? That was my guess. that person's content is arguably 100% recreational. But I'm going to guess that if you're asking this question and you're flying a Cinewhoop over a concert at night, that you're doing it as like in partnership or in you're working with the people putting on the concert, or in some other way it's a 107 operation. Once it's a 107 operation, the fact that your drone is sub 250 doesn't matter. 107 makes no distinction between sub 250 and over 250. Sub 250 exemption is only for recreational. Then we get to the categories of drone. And Blunty, this is a development that I haven't really completely internalized. There's different classes based on the weight and like whether they have exposed propellers and so forth. Do you know those like really well off the top of your head?
Check the link in chat.
Oh, great. Thank you, Blunty. Operations over people. So this is the rule for operations over people put out by the FAA. Blah, 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 blah. It permits routine operations of small unmanned aircraft over people moving vehicles at night under certain conditions. To determine if it would go over blah, 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 using a safety-based, risk-based approach, the small unmanned aircraft does not operate over non-participants who are not under a covered structure or in a stationary covered vehicle. So arguably, everyone at the concert is a participant. This could be covered by having them, like, you put a sign up at the entrance that says there will be drones flying over this event, and by entering this event, you consent to the drone flying over you. That's oftentimes when you see people doing, like, a fly-through of a bar or a big gathering, you're like, well, how did they get consent from all of those people? And the answer is they just put a sign up at the entrance, and by entering, you tacitly consent. So that's easy. Of course, if they didn't do that, then you'd have a problem. But we could easily make everyone at the concert a participant. It poses no undue hazard in the event of a loss of control. Some would argue that the sub 250 makes it inherently no undue hazard. And the small UAS is not operated in a careless or reckless manner. And that's just you, don't be a bonehead. But simply flying over people isn't inherently careless or reckless. So with those requirements are relatively easy to meet. And then we come to the operations over people categories. And you probably would fit under category 1, 250 grams or less, and no exposed rotating parts that would cause lacerations. So if it's sub 250 and has prop guards or ducts, you're good to go under category 1. And you're good to go. Although you're required to be compliant with remote ID, which if this is not a standard, this is not like a DJI drone, that's essentially impossible to do. Well, it's very difficult to do, especially after September 16th. It's not after September 16th yet, so you could put a remote ID module on there and be good to go on that one. And then I don't think category 2 or category 3 are going to matter because you stipulated that it's under 250 grams. And then we have night operations because this is going to be at night. Presumably the concert's at night. It must complete blah, 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 and it must have lighting visible for at least 3 statute miles. That is not going to happen. You will not be doing that because the concert or the people putting on the concert would be very annoyed at you for distracting from the beautiful concert. So essentially, you will not be complying with this, and you will be taking a chance that the FAA will get you in trouble. Although, Blunty, is there any way that you can think of to get around this?
I mean, you have to fly with anti-collision lights. Past if you're 107, you have to fly with them past, what is it, civil twilight? You don't. Yep. There's no option against it. So,
like one thing there's no.
I mean, who knows if they'll care? We're not talking about enforcement. We're talking about rules.
Right.
And yeah, I believe the rule is no matter what.
Yep. So that's how the FAA would feel about this operation and how we would approach this analysis.
My suggestion of how to solve that is just do a form of that 3 statute mile lighting in LEDs that are cool for the people that are in the crowd, right?
But they're so bright. Like the 3 statute mile LEDs are ridiculously bright.
Who's going to now? How do you know it's 3 statute miles? What metered are you going to bring out?
If you care about complying with the rules instead of trying to skirt the rules, you buy one that the manufacturer rates for 3 statute miles.
Yeah, I'm going to guess if you have a directional indicator based on different colors in the front and the back, that you can see from 3 statute miles. I mean, I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff that bright at a concert, at least concerts I go to.
That's true. I mean, maybe it's cool to have a lit up drone flying around.
I mean, yeah, it's like a UFO or something, you know?
So if you're a person who wants to do this, in summary, have a 107, have a remote ID module on your drone, or have a drone like the Avata that does remote ID, standard remote ID out of the box. Have it be less than 250 grams and have enclosed props, not open props, and have an LED, have a light on it that fulfills the 3 statute mile requirement if you're flying after civil twilight. Or just do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you said this, but make sure you go re-up your 107 to get your night training if you didn't do that.
Oh, that's a good point. If you got your certification a long time ago, you may not have gotten the night training.